Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Section 7's 3 and 30 series. Tonight we are here with our guest, Mr. Chris Mazzella, and we're excited to have him on. So thank you all for coming and attending and viewing this video, and here we go. Let's kick it over to Joey LaFranca.
Hey, thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. Glad to be back for 3 and 30. And Chris, glad to have you on today. And before we get going with anything else, I think a question that I pretty much asked every guest so far has been, how has, well, now pretty much literally the past year been for you? What have you been doing to try and keep busy during the pandemic? Obviously, everybody's routines have been kind of shifted up a little bit, and it's certainly been some weird times, but how have you been trying to keep busy and just trying to be as normal as possible?
Well, first of all, Matt and Joey, thank you for having me on. This is exciting. And I remember a couple months ago, Matt asked me about this concept. I thought it was a great concept, and I'm glad you got on board to do it. And now I'm privileged to have the chance to talk with the student athletes and families in Section 7. COVID for me it was a transitional time because it was a transitional time in my life. I had just retired as the principal at Prue High School in January. And I didn't have a crystal ball to know that COVID was coming, but I was getting ready to transition into a new position at CFES and do some consultant work and STEM work and get back into doing a little more classroom interaction with students when it happened. So I was able to still do some program development with that part of my new job. But what was very different was we have my wife Ann and we have 5 kids, and they're all in their 20s. And at the time we were home alone. And when COVID hit, they all came home. So well, we did a lot more grocery shopping. We did a lot more cooking, and it was fun. It was an exciting time because you don't generally have those opportunities to have everybody home. Not making light of all the travesty and the tragedy that other families may have gone through or the loss of loved ones, but for us, that was unique. And I actually, as a outlet, because I was recently retired, I actually started doing a lot of woodworking. I built some furniture and a few light sconces and tinkered with some stuff. I built some stuff for my son, who's an artist, to help him with his art project. So I did that, and I watched a lot of sports. Didn't watch a lot of sports, watched a lot of movies is what I meant to say. Missed out on I had Final Four tickets last year, missed out on those, and they rolled over to this year, but I can't go again this year. So hopefully I'll get to go next year. But that's what I did. And I still did a lot of work with schools to help them in the transition. I did get a chance to help a lot of principals and talk to them about how we can support them or just bounce ideas off them. So
now, before we get into your first takeaway of the night, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to just introduce yourself and tell everybody who exactly Chris Mazzella is for the people who don't know.
Well, I'm a pretty basic guy. I will tell you though, I've had some very unique life experiences. I was telling you earlier, I'm one of 9 kids. You don't see those kind of families anymore, and I'm a middle child. So I'm a fighter. I was getting poked at the top, and I had to return it down to the bottom. I went to Potsdam State as an undergraduate and wanted to be an engineer. I was in the 3-2 program studying physics and taking Clarkson courses at Clarkson. And I walked onto the basketball team, and this was back in the early 80s. And back then, Division III teams had JV teams. And I had a chance to play for a couple of years. And as I was thinking I was going to transfer to Clarkson, I took an education class. And it fit into my schedule, and I needed some credits, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I said, I don't think I want to be an engineer. I think I want to be a teacher. And at the same time, I actually took a coaching class from Jerry Welsh. And I was on the team, and I just envisioned myself being a teacher and a coach. And fortunately, after that, my junior year, I I didn't make the team. I actually didn't try out for the team. Coach Welsh and I had a conversation. I was studying physics. I was going to miss a lot of practices. I had afternoon labs. And quite frankly, he said, listen, you're a good player, but I need you in practice because you're not going to play in any games. So you can't be at practice, but you're always part of the program, and you're always welcome. So I graduated and I got a chance to be his graduate assistant. So I stayed on with him for 2 more years. What a wealth of knowledge, a remarkable coach. And honestly, I learned a lot about his approach to coaching, is how to approach life and approach teaching and approach being a principal. So, I'm going to kind of blend one of the things that I will talk about. I'm going to tell the kids one of my first things is you got to get outside your comfort zone. I got done with my graduate assistantship, and he said, what are your plans? I said, I'm going to, apply to be a physics teacher and a basketball coach. And he said, you should be a college coach. He said, you have it. You could be a really good college coach. And I thought, you're crazy. I'm just going to find a nice little school in New York State. And so he showed me what to do, and I sent out resumes all over the country. And I got a job at Lynchburg College in Virginia as the head assistant basketball coach. And then I was there for a few years. I had met my wife, and we were moving back up to the Plattsburgh area. She actually got a job at Beekmantown, and I became the assistant at Plattsburgh State with Larry Cowan. So I had a few years of experience coaching college, and fortunately, I had an opportunity to become the physics teacher at Peru at the same time. I was coaching college, never thought, I never thought I'd be at Peru long enough to get tenure because I wanted to be a college coach. Mm-hmm. And then I fell in love with the place. And eventually I decided college coaching is not a good thing for a family. I'll tell you a funny joke, a funny story. I don't know if any of our listeners know John Beeline, but he was the Michigan coach and was recently the coach at Cleveland Cavaliers. So Ann and I had just gotten married, and Coach Beeline called and said, listen, I'm looking for an assistant. I'd like you to come down and interview for the position at Lemoyne. So I asked Ann, I said, what do you think about that? She goes, how much does it pay? I said, $8,000. We got to live in a dorm. She said, no, you can't go to the interview. So I didn't get a chance to be John Beeline's assistant. I didn't get a chance to go Division I. When I used to watch him on TV, I'd say, Ann, look, we could be living in Ann Arbor, Michigan right now. But so the
$8,000 wasn't enough.
No, and on top of that, we had just gotten married. I didn't even have a job. And my in-laws didn't like me because I didn't have a job. So that would have been a really bad move. That might have been the shortest marriage in the history of mankind.
That would have been the deal breaker.
Yeah. So anyway, I started teaching in at Peru, and had an opportunity to coach some basketball. I had a great opportunity, actually. I coached with a North Country legend. Coach Ewald, the football coach, showed up at my house one day when I was painting my porch and said, I need a JV football coach. I said, when does practice start? He said, tomorrow. So I got a chance to coach with him. What a pleasure. And just learned so much. So I taught physics and coached basketball, and came into a program that really needed a lot of work. There wasn't a youth program. There hadn't been a lot of consistency. And I had wonderful people to help me, great people around to support. And, I think we did a really good job getting the Peru basketball program to be highly competitive in those years, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you just hinted at like your first takeaway a little bit. Did you want to expand upon that, or were you just such a pro that you just already said your first takeaway and I didn't even realize it?
No, I can talk about that.
Okay.
I just, so, the funny thing about it is when I was the principal at Peru High School, the coaches and the coaches and a lot of teachers, I would walk the halls and they would still refer to me as coach. And I got thinking one day, these kids, when I was coaching, they weren't even born yet, So, after 10 years of coaching, I pursued administration. I was a middle school principal for 4 years, and then I finished my career as the high school principal, and loved every day of it. So and done a lot of work with Section 7, and I serve on the United Way board. So I keep busy. I like to help people. Those are a few things that if people didn't know, they know now.
There you go. Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask you kind of in between your takeaways was, and I'm glad this is a good transition for it. You've been an educator, you've been a coach. Now, when we talk about student athletes, there's a reason they're called student athletes. They're going to school and they're competing in a various whatever sport they compete in. Now, from your perspective, just as an educator and a coach, you've been at it from both ends. What type of advice do you have for student athletes in terms of when it comes to balancing sports and balancing academics? Because it can be challenging at times, especially depending on what age we're talking about and moving forward, obviously, into their college careers, if we're talking about just from a Section 7 athletic perspective.
Yeah, great question. I mean, my first advice and always and foremost, as most people referred to me as coach, nobody ever called me principal, but I have to put my principal hat on, and I'd say, you have to take care of your academics first, for a multitude of reasons. One, and everyone says you're not gonna make $1 million playing in the NFL or the NBA or whatever, but the idea that if you take care of the little things like your homework, and getting enough rest and studying for that test, you don't have the stress of worrying about that. And those things evolve and they will impact eventually your play. When like, oh my gosh, I got a game tomorrow night and I might not be able to play because my schoolwork isn't done, and you're worried about getting all these back assignments done, where is your mental state to go out and compete and be a heck of an athlete and give your team your best? And in the essence of being a student athlete, if you don't take care of your schoolwork, you're letting down the other 11 kids on the team. If they're expecting you to be ready to play and you get yanked because of an academic violation, you've just let your whole team down. I mean, not doing your math homework is no different than not rotating on defense. You got to do all the little things you're supposed to do. So certainly I would put that first, but one of my first takeaways is, you have to get outside your comfort zone. And if you're not a great student, this is where you really need to develop these skills. Go advocate for yourself. Go to the teacher. Stay after school. Ask for a tutor. Do things that generally kids don't want to do. Do things that if you think you can hide an issue and it's going to go away, it's probably not going to go away. It's not easy to walk in to a teacher's room and say, I think I might need a tutor, or go to your counselor and say that. There are a lot of things that I have talked about with my kids at Peru's, especially when I was a principal. I ran a program there. It was called Leadership Lunch. And we met every 2 weeks and we talked about leadership development. And that was the biggest thing. I would tell the kids, you got to do a lot of little things. I mean, the first day, I would teach the kids how to shake somebody's hand. And believe it or not, to walk up, stick your hand out, shake someone's hand and look them in the eye, for 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, that's an uncomfortable feeling. They don't do it,
Yeah, right.
And we start with little things and we build our way up. And by the end of the year, these kids would put on a leadership summit. And other schools would show up and they would view their presentations. In sports, we do it all the time. Like you can do one more bench press. You can do one more sprint. You'll get out of your comfort zone. You'll take the physical pain because you want it. But in the long run, to blend student athlete together, you got to get outside the emotional pain. You got to say, I have to get uncomfortable to be great. I have to be uncomfortable to be great at something. And I think that's, doesn't matter what else happens. If you don't do that, you're just going to plateau.
Right. Hey, and you talk about handshaking. You don't even have to worry about that now. I feel like handshaking is just a lost art at this point.
And it may never come back.
It might not.
We may bow or, put a forearm up, but you still should look the person in the eye.
What would be your go-to greeting now? Would you go with the bow? I think that would be a good one.
I like the fist bump. I don't know if we can do that. I'm not sure I'm 100% up on all my COVID protocols now that I'm not in schools all the time, but,
right.
Maybe a salute. I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, that might work. But hey, let's get to your second takeaway. What's your second takeaway?
This goes back to my time working with Coach Welsh at Potsdam. And this was actually an old John Wooden quote. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. When I watched the way that he approached the teaching of the game and the way he approached a practice schedule, he would have an index card. And I use the same thing. And some of my former players that are coaches, I know they use the same thing. He would have drills written down to the minute. You might only do a drill for 3 minutes, or he would make sure every person had the exact same footwork in whatever skill development we did. But the preparation and, the scouting, like I remember one time we were getting ready for the SUNYAC championship.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 7 tapes on Buffalo State. And he made me watch every single one of them. And I watched every one, and I took notes, and I took notes, and I took notes. There wasn't a stone unturned. And ironically, there was an out-of-bounds play that we found on the tape that we were able to get a steal, change a possession in a tight game that they rarely used it. So, 7 tapes being watched and preparing and then putting it all in a scouting report. So what I learned as a coach and as a teacher is the best teachers are the teachers who are the best prepared. People who have great lessons and put time in before the kids there, you don't have to worry about classroom management. And it's the same thing with coaching. Bear Bryant said, coaches who do a lot of conditioning and running, they don't know what they're doing. Because if you don't have a lot of good stuff to engage your kids to develop them as better players and they just do sprints all the time, you don't know what to teach. So, lots of preparation and practices, very detailed game plans. And what I would say to the students is, if you take the mental approach to pay attention to the details and prepare, whether it's your studying, whether it's the part-time job you have, you're going to be successful. Those are transferable habits. When you go to apply for a job, if you have taken your time and really prepared your resume, and done your homework on the company that's going to interview you or the school that wants to hire you as a teacher or something, it'll show up in an interview. If you just wing it, it'll show up in an interview too. So my second piece would definitely be, be prepared, sweat the small stuff, turn over every stone, and that will again get you out of your comfort zone, and you'll be better for it.
And I agree with that, because the thing that I would really say to reinforce your point that you had just made was, when it comes to preparing for anything, like you said, whether it be for a game, whether it be for a job interview, if you are prepared, you're going to be comfortable and you're going to show that confidence that, let's face it, employers look for. And if an opponent from a different sport, if you show you're prepared and confident, that can be a big factor in any type of game scenario. And that's such a great point to make, because just time management, schedule, anything to give yourself a routine is so valuable. And if you don't have a routine in anything in life, you're gonna be struggling right from the get-go. So I think that's such a great point to make.
I'll tell you a quick story about preparedness. And
Sure.
I don't know what year this was. I can't remember exactly, but we started practicing to warm up every single day. I started this in November. And we would run a play that we automatically knew. We didn't have to call a timeout at the end of a game. So 4 scenarios. If we had the ball on the sideline, there was a play. If there was 4 seconds to go, you knew what to run. If you were on the far baseline and there was more than 7 seconds to go, the kids knew what play to run. And if there was less than 7 seconds, the kids knew what to play to run. We had it all timed out. We knew how to do it. Every single day, that was our warm-up. We didn't do 3-man weave. They ran the plays full court. They ran all the plays 5-on-0, and they just dummy patterned them. So we got to a sectional semifinal game, and we were down, and we came back, and we tied the game up. Or the other team, we went up to the other team, tied the game up with 2 free throws, and there was 8 seconds on the clock. Everyone thought we were going to call timeout. As soon as the kid made the second shot, we got the ball in bounds. We ran the play. Kid dove to the basket, caught it, laid it in at the buzzer. Game over.
There you go.
And it was just rote memory, and that doesn't happen if you don't prepare.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking strictly from a sports perspective, when you can have something like that happen, you don't allow the opposing defense time to settle in. And especially if you're talking about, because it sounded like a foul line break there that you were talking about a little bit there, just getting the ball in bounds, going right down the court.
Thing. I think they thought we were going to run our foul line break, and we didn't.
Oh, okay.
Now didn't matter. They knew, the kids knew. It's 1 second more than 7. It was greater. It was our one play. Yeah. It was a quick back door and a back screen, and the kid came off the back screen wide open and layup. And
there you go. But yeah, like you said, that just speaks to being prepared, having a plan, and reinforcing that plan over and over and again. Because with things like that you're describing, that's about repetition. That's about memorizing different things and just getting comfortable with it. And obviously, your team was comfortable enough in that scenario to run that with confidence and execute it perfectly. Yeah. And when you actually see it pay off, that just reinforces all those things are worth it. They might not seem like they're worth it as you're doing something small, but at the end of the day, it gets to the overall goal, which is just huge. Now, it's funny that we're talking about basketball. One of the other questions I wanted to ask you before getting to the third takeaway was, and this might be a little bit of a loaded question, but you talked about some basketball memories, but seeing that there's the banner behind you and everything that you've been incorporated in basketball into your life in so many ways, what is just one memory that really sticks out among the rest, that is just one of your favorites all time to either tell a story about, or just one of those memories that you cherish so much?
As far as, does it have to be sports related? Is it a principle?
We can actually, you know what? Let's make it a 2-pronged question. Let's do sports related first.
Sports, probably one of my all-time memories that really stood out was the first sectional championship. Because it was just such a, we had good athletes, and we had great kids. And those kids, but a bunch of those kids had just come off the football championship. And we had to take basically the basketball players and the football players who just won a state championship and meld them into a team. Mm-hmm. And I think at Christmas break, we were like 1-4 or 2-3, something like, it was a struggle. And the football kids were exhausted, and the basketball kids had been playing. And one of the best memories that I have was things weren't jiving near the end of the season, and kids were getting a little antsy and on each other's nerves, and I could see we were playing fantastic defense. We just weren't executing on offense yet. I'm like, we're going to be good. If I could have one more week, we could be good. So I got thinking. I said, we got to do some fun stuff. So I'd probably lose my job today if I did this, but we played tag. We did two fun things. We did, we shut the lights off in the hallways, in the box, the circle around the gym. And the kids played tag. And they thought it was great. And then the other thing that I did was I made all the kids take their shoes off. And all of our kids' sneakers, back then, everybody wore the same sneaker. You bought team sneakers.
Right.
But, Joey LaFranca was 12. Your number 12 was on your sneaker.
Yeah.
So I said, take your shoes off and take your practice jersey off. Throw it in the center of the court. And I mean, the kids were like, what the heck are you doing? Like, are you kidding me? And they're giving me a hard time. And I said, 6 of you down there, 6 of you down there. I said, you got to sprint to the middle. You guys have to find your sneakers. You have to work together, find your jersey, go back to your respective end and do a full court sprint and back. And you got 1 minute to do it.
Yep.
And they did it. And then they loved it. They thought it was the greatest thing. And you had to put your shoes on to run the sprint. You couldn't just carry your shoes and run a sprint.
Sure.
So they had to grab a sneaker and say, 24, Johnny Smith, and 12, Joey LaFranca. And then they, here's 17, and they throw each other, and they just work together. And then that was it. I mean, that was, all of a sudden, it just clicked.
Yeah.
And after that, they played great. We played great. That was a great memory, watching a team that was about ready to implode, and all of a sudden just bounce back.
Yeah, and I think what before we get to your third takeaway, I think one thing that I want to say about that is I asked you one of your favorite sports memories from coaching, and you just listed off something fun that you did during practice. And I feel like that's such an important point to make, is it's not always from a game. It's not always about a win. Sometimes it's just about a moment. And I think that's a great example of just how much can go into coaching and what little thing can stand out as one of the most favorite memories that you have. And I think that's awesome.
I'll tell you one thing. When you're a teacher and when you're a principal, you're still a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can tell you a real quick story. I had this kid when I was a principal, really bright kid, tough background, not a lot of money, kind of a goofball. And I saw his PSAT scores, and I grabbed him the first day of school. And I said, I'm changing your schedule. Your test scores are off the chart. And he goes, what are you talking about? Am I in trouble? It's the first day of school. And I said, no. So we put him in AP classes. We accelerated him in math. And I had asked him, I said, what do you want to do? He goes, I don't know. I'll go to CV Tech and be a nurse's aide or something. I said, how about you be a doctor?
Mm-hmm.
Time goes by. I'm driving down the highway. I get a phone call. Hello? Mr. Mazzella? Yeah. He said, it's Evan. I said, hey, Evan, what are you doing? What's up? I haven't talked to him in 5 years. He was in my leadership coach and stuff. He said, you were the first person I wanted to call other than my mother. I got into med school today.
Wow.
So that's coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, it's coaching. You just, I'm going to motivate you to do this because you can do it.
Yep. Oh, I think that's what a great story. What a great story. That's a perfect transition. We can get right to your third takeaway now. What is your third and final takeaway?
So my third takeaway, would be do everything you can to be inclusive. Include everybody. Build bridges and not walls. High schools are cliquey places, and you've got art kids and you got music kids and you got the athletes. Be inclusive. Get out of your comfort zone. Go do something unique. Go to the National Art Honor Society show on a Thursday night. Don't stay in your lane. Get out of your lane. For multitudes of reasons. One, you're going to grow exponentially. Mm-hmm. Go sit at a different lunch table with someone else. Or invite kids to your lunch table. For a lot of reasons. It's a good skill to learn. You can impact somebody's life immediately. You can make somebody's day better. But in the long run, if you have these skills, you're going to expand your network.
Yeah.
because at some point you're going to keep meeting people, and athletics is going to die, and you're going to be a salesman, or you're going to, you know, be a school teacher, or whatever it happens to be. And you're going to have built relationships in the long run that are going to be much more significant than a high school soccer game.
Mhm.
You know, just don't worry about your image. Don't worry about what you can't control, and put a lot of people in your tent. Be good to everybody. You know, I mean, just be kind, and include everyone. Our differences are not that much.
That's a really great way to, I feel like, wrap this up. This has been awesome. I just realized, I mean, the 30 minutes of this just flew by, and I wanted to kick it back to Matt real quick for any type of housekeeping things to talk about, and we can kind of wrap this up. But Matt, I will kick it to you right now.
This was this was this was awesome, guys. Thanks so much. I was just sitting back here and enjoying the conversation and in the chat, and those of you, I just love to hear about Coach Welch. As a young kid myself, I went to Potsdam basketball camp and marveled at the NCAA Division III championships that were hanging up in the gym, and it's awesome to just know that a coach can, you know, completely change the course of people's lives and then, you know, reunite them back together. So thanks so much, Chris. Thanks so much.
Guys, thank you. This was wonderful, and it was a pleasure. And Matt, I think it's a great idea you got this started. I hope the student athletes get some benefit out of these things.
Yeah, and the other housekeeping thing is I think you're gonna find these on a YouTube page coming up shortly, Section 7 YouTube page, so that we can get this out, put this out on social media and really share this for people to go back and take a half hour and get a little motivator out there. I know it's been helping me. And I hope it can help everyone that watches these events.
I think that's great.
Yeah, that I think that's awesome, and I hope and one thing I wanted to say too is we've been talking in the past just in-house about this, but it's I want to make sure everybody knows that these videos, I will also be making these available on the Press Republican's website, pressrepublican.com. There will be an ongoing story link where the links from different interviews that we've done in the past with different guests will be available as well. So we just want to do everything in our power to get these interviews out to the public in any way possible, whether it be on multiple platforms. And Matt, I really like that idea of the Section 7 YouTube channel. So I think that's also great. And Chris, I just wanted to thank you and say it was really fun just talking different things, talking hoops. You know, I always love talking hoops, and this was fun.
Well, thanks, Joey. Matt, appreciate it as always. Great team to work with.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have
See
a
you
good
guys.
night. All right.